So for the JRPG news this week, and as every week, I always source my news from Gematsu. One thing I do want to say is, like, I don't know how Gematsu works, or like if whether they have like a lot of writers or not. I hope they start tagging JRPG news better. It's very odd to me that they have a JRPG news section, and I checked this week and I'm like, there's like no JRPG news. There's like one news story. I'm like, okay, it's a week news story, or a news week. And then I just went to the RPG section, which is general RPG news, and they had a fuck ton of JRPG news there. And so I was like, what the fuck? For some reason, they don't tag the JRPG news as JRPG a lot of the time. So like, there's a Dragon Quest news, there's like Visions of Mana news, which are obviously JRPGs, but they just weren't tagged as that. So I don't know what's happening there, but hopefully they start tagging JRPG news more accurately. But that is something I've been noticing. But yeah, we have a lot of random miscellaneous news stories, and we have like one that I'm the most interested in, which I'll talk about at the end, which is about a new game called Neverness to Everness. But let's start with some smaller stuff. First of all, there is another live stream announced for Metaphor ReFantazio. They've been doing these live streams to kind of drop info, and I've talked about some in depth in the past. I haven't been going that in depth recently because, you know, I've been busy, and also because I feel like I've had my fill of the game in terms of wanting to know information. At this point, I'll play it whenever it comes out and experience it. But I believe this is going to be the fourth stream, and they wrote here that the broadcast will feature and introduce the election candidates and followers in Alice's new fantasy RPG Metaphor ReFantazio with director Katsura Hashino. So I'm assuming that's all like in the context of the game, so I'm assuming there's some political plot happening in the game, and that's what they're talking about. And so yeah, so it just seems like more world building stuff. This is the type of stuff that I talk about where, like, I don't know why you need to know this before the game comes out. Like, this is stuff where, like, let me experience it in the game, but I guess if you really want as much information as you can get, this is a stream that is happening, and it's happening on July 29th. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, so very soon, in a few days from when I'm recording this. So that was one of the news stories. I also want to mention, and I don't think I usually ever mention this on the episode, but every time I'm kind of collating all the news, I feel like there's always news about Tearal's Farewell to Zemuria, which is a game that's only in Japan, or is coming out in Japan, I think, which I'm assuming that's like the newest Tearal's game. I never look at the news story because I don't want to be spoiled, but I thought I would mention that there is news for it. So if you are interested in it, feel free to check out Gematsu or Google about it, because there is a news story about the newest Tearal's game in Japan. If you do care about that, I definitely do not want to fucking look at it because I don't want to be spoiled, and I am always spoiled just a little bit just by seeing the news story. But yeah, that is a thing. In case you're interested, feel free to check it out on Gematsu. Another news story: Rise of the Ronin has a demo available now. I believe, like, as I was planning this, had released like 30 minutes ago, and so like it came out today. So that is something I don't know if I'll check out. If I have time, I might check it out. I don't really have time to play right now. I'm honestly gonna probably pack my PS5 very soon, and so I may check that out in the future, and if I do, I'll obviously talk about it on this podcast. But yeah, that is something that is out. Also, Tribe 9, the PC closed beta has been announced for August 9th to 15th. If you don't know what this game is, I talked about it in a past episode. I believe this is the game that's made by the Danganronpa developers, because they had a very similar visual style. But I think this was more of an action RPG compared to Danganronpa being more of a visual novel. And I did express interest about this game, and so the fact that there's a closed beta very soon in the next few weeks is pretty cool. So it's a PC closed beta from August 9th to 15th. Another announcement, one that is very nice for me, is Wuthering Waves has been officially announced to be in development for PlayStation 5. So fuck yes, this is amazing. I thought this announcement was weird because my brother actually told me about it, and this is something I've always wanted for PS5, because I swear to God, this was always a known thing. Because I think it's not like it was a surprise, because I believe Wuthering Waves was always supposed to be on PlayStation. Like, it was a listed console at some point, and so when they announced that it's coming for PS5, I'm like, yeah, it should have been. Like, it should have been in development, but it's nice to have further confirmation that it's coming, because it's weird because I really wanted a PS5 when it came out, but I'm so used to playing it on my phone now where, like, at this point, I don't even know if I would play it 100% on the PS5. I probably would, but, like, I definitely treat it as a mobile game, so I'll see how much I play on the PlayStation 5, but it definitely is good, because I noticed for Wuthering Waves specifically, the analog stick doesn't feel as responsive as I would like it sometimes, because it's one of those games where, like, the analog stick disappears when you're not using it, and when you touch the screen it comes back. And so I've noticed sometimes in fights where I try to move, it just doesn't respond to my finger sometimes, which sucks, which isn't a thing in other games that I've played on my phone. So that's like the only reason that I would probably play on PS5, because I would have like full controller support. Or honestly, if they just add controller support to the mobile version, I might just keep playing on mobile. But nonetheless, it being on PlayStation 5 is nice, because I think Wuthering Waves is a fantastic game, and the more people that play it, the better. Next news story: Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising has a DLC character called Versugia, which is coming out August 20th. And I believe they also teased other characters called Vikala and Salda phone. I didn't look too much into this, but if you're into Grand Blue Fantasy, that is happening, which is cool. It's always nice to see DLC characters being added to games. That's something I talked about in a previous episode too. I like post-release content. I know some people don't, but I always think it's a good idea as long as it's priced fairly and the game's getting more characters, which is dope to see. And now the next few news stories are going to be a bit more detailed. So one of them is about Visions of Mana. So there was pretty much a kind of like a news/info dump for Visions of Mana, which details Aish, more elemental vessels, elemental plots, and Little Cactus, which I believe if you're more aware of the game. I haven't played any of the Mana games, so I don't know what those are, but based on me kind of skimming the article, some of these things are returning things. And so let me just read the synopsis real quick, or like the main description of it, which is: in Tiania, the fire village, everyone is preparing for the coming of the Fairy and the naming of an elm. Every 4 years, elms from around the world are chosen to travel to the Tree of Mana and rejuvenate the flow of mana power by offering the souls. A soul guard accompanies the chosen alms to ensure their safe pilgrimage. On the day of the Fairy's arrival, Vol, the new soul guard, brings a childhood friend, Hina, to the festival. As the sun falls beneath the skyline, all the spectators wait with bated breath, hoping to be chosen as an elm. The Fairy finally descends before Hina, appointing her the Elm of Fire. The villagers bid them both farewell, praying for the success as they embark on the adventure of a lifetime. I believe this is the first time I'm reading the plot of the Visions of Mana game, which is weird. I feel like I might have, but like this seemed new to me, which is dope. I'm pretty sure I butchered every single fucking name. They're all spelled very unexpectedly, so I don't know if I said any of them right, but pretty interesting plot, because as I was reading, like if you didn't know, when I'm reading the plot for a new story, I purposefully don't read it until I'm recording just so I have my fresh thoughts. I didn't expect the main character's friend to be chosen. As I was reading this, I'm like, well, obviously the main character Val is gonna be chosen as like the elm or whatever the fuck that is, but Val's friend being chosen is pretty cool, so that's a pretty cool dynamic. So I'm assuming Val might be more of like a guard or something of her maybe on this adventure, but it sounds interesting. I've talked about this game more in depth previously, where it does look interesting to me. I've never played a Mana game, so I do want to try this at some point. But yeah, that's just a very small snippet of the news that was dropped for this game. If you really want to know in detail about everything they dropped, feel free to check it out on Gematsu. The other news story is Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, detailed story, protagonist, world, spells, and abilities. So just like Visions of Mana, they had a pretty huge news dump for this game. And the description I can read off real quick is: the quaint kingdom of Aliahan, home of the great hero Ortega and you as child, and the story's protagonist. On your 16th birthday, you receive an order from the king to do what your late father could not and defeat the archfiend Baramos. Thus begins your journey to save the world. What surprises does fate have in store for you? So pretty generic plot. I'm pretty sure I've read this before in the past, but again, just like Visions of Mana, there's a lot of details posted for the game. If you really care about that stuff, go ahead. Like I mentioned, I don't really like knowing all that stuff before the release, but I did skim it. I saw some of the designs. I haven't played any of these Dragon Quest games, like the older ones. The only one I played is like most of 11, and so it's pretty cool to see. It's nice to see who this character is, because I recognize this Dragon Quest character from Smash. This is actually the design that I use whenever I use him in Smash, so it's pretty cool. I noticed there was a female version too. I'm not sure if that's a different character or that's just like a gender thing you can choose. I do think I do like the female version's design better. Like her hair is kind of like Teen Gohan-ish. I kind of wish like it was a guy with that hair, but I like the designs from what I've seen so far. But like I said, if you want to see everything in more detail of like the world, the spells and abilities, I was skimming through the article. It's a lot of detail. They go into the news in depth. Feel free to check it out in Gematsu. And the final news story, which is a supernatural urban open world RPG announced for the PS5, PC, iOS, and Android. So this is coming to most consoles. I don't think Xbox is here, but I think JRPGs usually don't come on Xbox. And I don't think it's on Switch either, which is interesting. I think at this point phones are stronger than the Switch too, so it's kind of understandable. But this is again like a Genshin type game, so like Wuthering Waves, like Genshin, maybe even like Honkai Star Rail or Zenless Zone Zero, blah blah blah, like that type of game. And one thing that surprised me when I read it is apparently this is by the Tower of Fantasy developers, which is interesting to me because I tried playing Tower Fantasy when it came out, and I mentioned this in a previous episode, but to me it felt very half-baked. Like it felt kind of rough. The controller support really wasn't there, and while I did enjoy the few hours that I put into it, it did feel like it needed more time to cook before I would jump into it again. Recently I tried it again on the PlayStation 5 because it's out on the PlayStation 5 now, and honestly I didn't give it too much time. To be fair, I only gave like 45 minutes. It felt the same, honestly. It felt pretty rough. The controller support was like okay. I did like the game. I do think the game has a pretty strong intro, but again it did feel pretty half-baked. I can't say anything for like the later stages of the game. I know they keep updating the game. I know there's like new locations, new plot developments and whatever, so maybe the first hour of the game is always going to be rough, but whenever like I did try playing the game, it felt like it was kind of rough. And so I was very surprised to hear that they're working on this new game now called Neverness to Everness, because this to me seems like the equivalent of when like Genshin did very well and they announced we're going to do Zenless Zone Zero, or like even Honkai Star Rail. This seems very similar where they have Tower Fantasy, which is like a Genshin Impact type game, and now they're working on Neverness to Everness. And if you watch the trailer, feel free to YouTube it or Google it. This very much seems like a Zenless Zone Zero visually, and like everything, like the style wise, it seems very much like Zenless Zone Zero, which I don't think they copied or anything. That's not how game development works. Game development obviously takes a long time. But when I look at this, I'm like, this very much seems like the Zenless Zone Zero equivalent to like Genshin Impact, which is interesting. But the more I read about it, the more interested I was, because one of the main things that was interesting that I found out is it feels like more of a sim game. I'll actually read the description first before moving on, which is: Neverness to Everness unfolds in a unique world where the ordinary and extraordinary coexist, a city teeming with anomalies and humans alike. As players, you will make a grand entrance into the city, employing your extraordinary Esper abilities to navigate and tackle the unexpected anomalies that await. Neverness to Everness also offers a variety of lifestyles for the players to choose from, modify sports cars, manage businesses, etc., and experience a vibrant urban life in the way you like. So first of all, it's urban, just like Zenless Zone Zero, as I mentioned, so it's like a modern city instead of being like some fantasy land. But the modify sports cars and manage businesses is very interesting. Manage businesses makes me think it might be more sim-like, but the modify sports cars, I was like, what? There's cars in here? And then when I watched the trailer, I'm like, this is straight up like, it looks like GTA. There was like a car, you got to customize it, you get to drive it around the city. So I'm really happy with like the turn these Genshin Impact type games are taking, because when I started seeing these Genshin Impact type games, I thought they were all going to be just like Genshin Impact, which is the exact same gameplay style, visual style, etc. But I'm liking that like all of them are doing something very different, where like Zenless Zone Zero obviously is made by the same developers as Genshin Impact, but like that is, if you played it, it is nothing like Genshin Impact. Gameplay wise, there's nothing like it. I'll say story wise, nothing like it. Setting wise is very different. This, that I would expect something to be like Genshin Impact, it has like cars and stuff. So every game is putting a specific spin to it, which I'm really enjoying. And so while I came into Neverness to Everness thinking it was going to be like another Genshin Impact type game, it does seem very different from what I've seen so far. So I am looking forward to it. I kind of skimmed through the article. They showed some enemies. There's this one like enemy that was made out of film reels, which I thought was very cool. I'm really liking the focus of supernatural, which I think is very cool, because usually these type of games are more like, you know, focused on technology or fantasy, but I don't think they usually take a supernatural angle at it. So the fact that this is more supernatural focused and everyone has like Esper abilities, I think is a very cool twist. And so I'm definitely looking forward to this. I'm going to keep an eye on it. And Neverness to Everness is a pretty cool name too, honestly. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to this game, and that will do it for the news section.